two,
Three,
two,
two,
one.
one.
Projector eyes.
Projector eyes.
Projector eyes.
Projector eyes.
The Projector Eyes podcast with Travis Day.
It's like so funny. I'm like, okay.
Did he look? When you see him, can you picture his like what he looks like?
Yeah, like we were getting ready to we had a little bit of time before our concert, and so we were laying down. Trish and I were laying down in our room, and then Corey was laying in her room. And from where I was laying, I could see Corey because her bed was angled at a different direction. And so I was sort of closing my eyes and just trying to try to get at least a 20-minute nap in before we were gonna go. And Trish was passed out. Corey's on her phone, and I'm sort of in that trance state because I was eyes are falling asleep, but I'm not falling asleep. And then I just saw in my mind's eye, because I'm a mental medium, so I see everything here. I just see this little old man, he's just shuffling down the hallway, doing his thing, and I wasn't afraid of him. I was just oh, how cute! Look at that little old man. He's just shuffling down the hallway, And then I saw a very clear picture of an elderly woman in my mind's eye, of her at her towards the end of her life. She was very ill. She showed me she had cancer in the lungs, and that she was dying at home. And so I was just seeing glimpses of stuff. So again, it wasn't really I wasn't afraid of it, but I was okay. And so I was just saying, to the house, because sometimes it's psychic impression and sometimes it's spirit communication. So I was just saying to the house, okay, we're here. We're going to be here till tomorrow. We'll get out of your way. We're just going to spend the night. And so that night when we got back from the concert, we weren't out late. I think we got home at, I want to say 10, maybe. We go to sleep, and Trish and I were talking until about 11. And then Corey had already went to her room to go to sleep. And so we go into our room and shut the door. And probably 30 minutes later, Trish and I are talking, and 30 minutes later, we hear this literally it's an old house. I think it was 100 years old house. The wood floor was it was dum 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 dum. You hear door close, and I was oh, that must have been Corey going to the bathroom. Don't hear the toilet flush. Don't hear the sink come on. Door opens. Dum 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 dum. And we're coming back towards the door, and we're Corey? Nothing. And I was okay, that was weird. And then it happened again. And I'm what is she doing? But it wasn't her. So then the next day we were talking about it the next morning, because we had to leave the next morning to take off to go towards Santa Fe. So I had my luggage in the living room because the rooms were small and both of our stuff wasn't going to fit in the room. So I just had my luggage in the living room. I had the suitcase open and I had this bag of vitamins in my suitcase, in the suitcase, it was open, but it was in the suitcase. And Corey and I were talking about it, and I was yeah, it's so weird. I said, I'm aware that there's someone here, but it's not they're trying to communicate. They're just here. And I go, but I wonder if they're okay, it's time for you to go now. You said you were going to be leaving in the morning. And then just as I said that, you hear this loud boom. And Corey and I jumped and screamed, and it was coming from the living room. And we go in the living room, and my bag of vitamins, I don't know, jumped out of my suitcase and landed on the ground. And so we were what the heck? I was okay, we're leaving. And I go, or maybe he just wants me to take my vitamins. So we were laughing, but just that's the kind of stuff that happens when I travel with Trish and Corey.
What is, you said it could be psychic impression or spirit communication. What's the difference between those?
Well, psychic is you'll see an image or an imprint of a memory that took place, but it's not communicating with you. It's just energy.
Okay. Gotcha.
And if it's a spirit that's communicating, then I can get information. Tell me about your life. Tell me about this. Tell me about that. And so there was pieces of it that felt like a psychic impression. I was just experiencing the energy that was still left behind in the home.
Gotcha.
But then there was other parts of where I was aware that the woman was, towards the end of her life when she was in that home, and that she had died from cancer, because she had told me. So it was a blend of both,
Gotcha.
And so there's a difference between the two.
And how much can they interact, your vitamins jumping out of your bag? How much can spirits interact with the physical world still? Or can they make things happen? You do hear them, it's interesting.
Well, I always think that it takes a lot of energy for the world of spirit to do something like that, because, but I don't know. It still scares me when shit like that happens. You know what I mean? Like, I'm always like, whoa. I always get like, anytime anything happens, even though I've been doing this for 7 years, I
Yeah.
still get like, how did that happen?
Yeah.
But I don't know. I wasn't in the room when it happened. I was trying to make sense of how it happened. I was like, okay, what the heck? But I don't know how the vitamins fell out of this. It was like, how you have like the zippers?
Yeah.
My suitcase was wide open. The zipper was open on one side. So it was in the suitcase. It wasn't like it was sitting on the edge. It wasn't like it was sitting on top. It was in the suitcase. I had just looked at it and I was thinking I needed to take my hormonal vitamins, my hormones and my vitamins. It's so cool. And and so Corey and I screamed and I was like, okay. And I don't really put that much thought into it, honestly.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, okay, whatever. I'm used to it. Like I said, when I travel, especially
Yeah.
with, my friends that do this work, it's never a dull moment. There's always
Yeah.
a tugging of the foot, tugging of the hair. There's always things opening and closing. I hear things. And sometimes I'm like, am I hearing that psychically, or am I hearing it in my psychic ears, or did that actually happen? But it obviously actually happened, because both Corey and I
Yeah.
jumped, looked at each other, ran in the other room, and we were like, whoa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You want to just reintroduce yourself and just
Hi, guys.
tell us. Jess has been on the pod before, so if you want her full story, you can go listen to that episode. But what is it what's your life's work? What are you up to now?
Oh boy, what do I do now? I feel like the first time that I was on your podcast, I feel like we really talked about my world of mediumship, but everything has changed as it does over the years. I feel like when I first, started offering sessions, it was very heavily focused on traditional mediumship readings. And over time, it's been heavily focused on, well, not only mentoring, but it's intuitive healing, shamanic healing practices, and then also mediumship. And so, that's what I do. I offer those shamanic womb journeys. I mentor women to tap into their own intuition. And then I also do one-to-one sessions. And so,
And you're a 5'1"?
And I'm a 5'1".
Splenic manifestor?
Yes.
Yeah.
What's the other part? 5'1" something. What is it? Heretic investigator?
The heretic investigator. Yeah.
I'm like, what's it called again?
There's
Yes.
so many different keynotes you can give to those profiles. But the really interesting thing to me in human design is he talks about spirits. It's like in the deeper levels of the knowledge, but he was told that when we die, we're supposed to go through this, I think it's like a 72-hour process, so that our spirit can return back to where it came from. And if you don't get the care and the time that you needed, you can get stuck here, or you can just be kind of like a lost soul in a way, wanting to return back, but it just didn't happen for some reason. So we do talk about this in human design, and he does bring up like people's ability to tap into different consciousness of different people who have existed before. So what do you think it is for you? Like, I mean, this is the work that you do. Why is it important?
Well, I just feel from just my experience of working with people over the years that a lot of times people started with me with not really having a faith of what happens after they leave here. It's almost this sort of lost energy. So I do think that when the world of spirit chose to work through me, it was to give people peace and hope and inspire them to really like gather their own wisdom and knowledge and reconnect to the self. Obviously, after we've seen everything that's gone on over the last couple of years, especially with COVID, and we saw that fear that ran through the communities and through the world. And I don't know, I just feel like this work is really important because we're meant to, one, reconnect. We're meant to be able to communicate. I think a lot of the communication is telepathic. Like, honestly, I think that's our most natural state, and we're remembering how to do that again. But I don't know. I just feel like the more that we, anchor back into our hearts and find our own peace, the better we are going to be for ourselves and humanity. Yeah, it's important work. It's big work. Not everybody wants to do it. I get it. I didn't want to do it in the beginning either.
Yeah.
Right? It was like, oh shit, I got to look at my stuff.
Yeah.
But what I will say is, in that short amount of time, as you know, like when we met, it was like this, it happens so fast, right? It feels like once you start to say yes to yourself, things start to develop. And when you fall into alignment with yourself, like pathways open up for you and everything feels like it can be in flow. And I know what it's like to not be in flow. I mean, I was not in flow for most of my life. And so I'm happy where I'm at. I'm glad that, you know, everything that has transpired to this point, it hasn't been easy. It hasn't always been the easiest road. Because it does require you to look at, you know, those parts of yourself that you don't want people to see. Right. I remember one of the first times I was on your podcast, I was like, shit, did I just call myself a psychic medium?
I remember.
And now I'm like psychic medium. Right. And so, yeah, it's, I don't know. I think it's important. I think it's important for us to check in with ourselves and to love on ourselves and to grow and evolve.
It's, I mean, anyone doing this type of work, we kind of have the same storyline. Like we do different things, but there's so many similarities. And like you were saying, like my life now is in a flow that I can't really explain. I'm not doing what I thought I would be doing, right? But there's just this experience of like, wow, this is so fulfilling. I'm in so much flow. Like I don't really know why, but this is it's obvious to me, the synchronicities that have been happening lately. And yeah, it's yeah, I don't question it anymore.
I know it almost, and when that alignment is off, it feels so big, doesn't it? Like when we were like, oh wait, that does not feel in alignment for me. And I love that feeling where you're like, not in alignment. Okay. I'm just going to like move over here. And because that was something that I questioned, you know, my whole life. It was like, I've always had a strong intuition, but I would get the intuition and then I would go, but what do you guys think? Like, you know what I mean? And so to unlearn that and to be like, nope, this is my yes, or this is my no, it feels good. It feels good to be there.
That's, I mean, as splenic beings, we are super intuitive. And I always tell people how quickly and easily the mind can rationalize away those splenic hits. And then you can make yourself think you're crazy, you know, or make yourself think like, no, that can't be it. But it is when you start to follow it. It's so obvious.
I was just sharing with a client before we hopped on here that I still will go, did that just happen? You know, like I had a client yesterday and she was talking about going through all these changes and I was seeing like a big move in the future for her. And I was like, oh boy, I have to tell her her whole life's about to change. And, and even though I can see and feel into the possibilities and it felt really expansive, it's, you know, it's a little like, oh God, I'm seeing this girl move and changing jobs and she might get a little nervous about that. And so I told her all the messages that were coming through. And then she had said, well, do you see like what state? And I immediate response, I heard Austin, Texas, felt it in my stomach, but I was like, shit, do I say just Texas? So, right. And so I questioned it, even though I knew it and I heard it, it was just like, oh, I got in my head for a second.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm hearing Texas. And she goes, oh my God, I was thinking about Austin, Texas. And I was like, see, that was that quick hit. Right. And I questioned it for a second because I didn't want to be wrong.
Yes.
I didn't want to say Austin, Texas. I didn't want to be wrong. I just said Texas, you know, and with hesitancy.
Yeah.
But it's that feeling. I know that feeling now, you know, but even though I know that feeling, I still am human and also go, ooh, you know, like, ooh. Yeah. But I love when you and I talked about human design, because again, I'm like, even now I'm still like learning and understanding it. And I'm like, but when I get to see all those different layers to not only my astrology chart, but I'm like, wow, it is really written out for us, isn't it? We could just follow loosely this map, I guess, or just sort of color outside the lines a bit. It's just like finding that flow is incredible.
Yeah, it's I mean, we're going through this massive transition and he was told that during these times of change, the program will give us a little something to help us go through this change. And so we get to peek behind the curtain and see how we operate and what's going on here. And every time I find someone's design, it's like Christmas morning. But then watching them live it out, it's just been such a like a real life experience of watching the chart come alive. And it's just been so fascinating. And yours, I mean, you have the 5720, your intuition connected directly to your throat for manifestation and communication. And that was a fun one to find out when I pulled yours up.
Well, yeah, I bet that is fun for you to be a teacher and to be able to see that. Cause I get so excited when I see visions and things that are on the forefront for people. And when they start to move into that space and then all the stuff that they're creating because they're in that space, it's fun. You're like, wow, that's really cool how you get to explore. And so, yeah. How do you like teaching?
I I love it.
Yeah, me
When
too.
I'm not in my head. I've been really struggling lately. I just started a new course. I teach a living your design workshop. It's like an 8-week thing, and we go through all the basics. And I was relaunching my podcast, and my mind had come up with this very strategic plan of like how everything was going to go and what it was going to be. And I was like in 2 weeks of trying to execute this plan, I was so burnt out and so bitter and so exhausted and really not excited to teach or to do any of this. And then once I realized what was happening, I was just like, okay, I surrender. Show me what is it supposed to be? And I started to tap back into my why and my
Mm.
excitement and like how can I make this fun again? And so I was really able to like switch back into that. And now I'm like more fired up than ever. My group is so amazing. I'm having so much fun. I'm doing all these new things. But again, I'm just like surrendering to what is that excitement in my body and not allowing my mind to try to control everything because that's when
Ooh,
it goes
that's
terribly
the
wrong.
one, right? I'm like that as a teacher too, because well, you know me, I like to break rules. I just don't like
Same.
rules and don't put me in a box. But I've learned over, the last 4 years of teaching that I'm like, oh, I love being that spontaneous
Mhm.
teacher and tapping into what's the need of this group in this moment. And so I
Yeah.
always tell my students that sign up for my mentorships, especially with group mentorships, I'm like, this is like the base,
Mhm.
but we go rogue.
Mhm.
We're gonna tune in each week and see what the need is for the group, and then we'll do the foundational tools, but we're always gonna
Yeah.
color outside the lines. And that's been so fun for me because it really allows me to just really expand where
Yeah.
I'm meant to expand versus because I have a Virgo rising, and that part of me wants perfection
Mhm.
and wants organization, but at the same time it's at my detriment,
Mhm.
and I'm like, so I have to, it's a gentle dance between my
Mm.
mind and my intuition. But I do love teaching in that way, that very like, allow spirit to lead me.
You're such a beautiful expression of that intuitive flow. How do you trust um that it's going to all work out or that you're going to have something come up? That's my mind is like, what if you show up and nothing's planned
And the
and
mic
then
doesn't come on.
yeah, yeah. Which never ever happens. It's
It
such a
doesn't.
it's such a stupid fear, but you're just such a great example of that. Do you
Well,
yeah.
it took me a minute to get here.
Yeah.
It really, really did. Because in the beginning, I was in such control of everything, even in my classes and me as a student. And,
Mhm.
when I got the call to start teaching in 2019, my guides were showing me that we were going to need it to prepare for the year of 2020. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know what any of that meant, and I was like, oh, okay, so I'm here going to launch this thing in the early, early 2020. And then all of a sudden everything shuts down. And so in the beginning, it was like, oh shit, like, what did you sign me up for? Like, I was like, are people going to sign up for this? And they showed me who was going to sign up. They showed me the number of people that were going to sign up. And so I was like, okay. And in the beginning, I was so in my head, even though I was getting the downloads of what to do. I was like, no, no, I need them to have this. I need them to have
Mhm.
structure. I need that. It was
Yeah.
very much like that military upbringing in my life was like, have to have all these things. And that was what I learned from doing that in my own energy is it wasn't serving me. I would get
Mhm.
exhausted after. I was
Yeah.
like so depleted. And where normally when I do sessions, I wasn't depleted after. I actually had a lot of
Mhm.
energy. And so I would get the repeating message of get out of your own way and allow us to flow through you. And just the work that I do with psychic mediumship, like you have to trust.
Yeah.
You have to trust. And so you take a lot of chances and you
Mhm.
sometimes you scrape your knees and all of the things. And so that trust piece was developed over time. It didn't happen
Mhm.
overnight. And I'm like, again, like what I shared earlier, I was like, you want me to say Austin, Texas? I'll just say Texas, right?
Yeah.
Right. I kind of trusted, right? Like,
Yeah.
and so I think that it's very normal for us to question and
Mhm.
fall into that, that thinking mind. I think that is our human experience.
Yeah.
But with practice and repetition, a lot of my students will say, well, I want to do what you do. And I'm like,
Mhm.
what I did was like unheard of. I was full time in development of my psychic and mediumship communication. Like most people will go like once a week and, oh, they take a class here and there and they're just sort of doing things like, oh, my friend told me to come. I was committed. And I literally was in psychic circles 2 to 3 days a week on top of classes and workshops. I was doing practice readings on the side because I was crazy and wanted to make sure that what I was receiving was like, am I going to go to the nut barn? Like what's happening, And so I just threw myself into development. And so whenever people ask me, like, how do you get to that place of where you trust? I'm like, it takes practice.
Yeah.
You have to practice. You have to put yourself out there and give yourself the opportunity to just try. Like, I mean, I'm sure you were scared shitless when you started doing your sessions, which I think is incredible. Because when you started doing human design, I was like, this is your fucking jam,
I know.
Right? And
I was
I'm
like,
sure
no,
you were
it's not.
sweating.
You're like, yes, it is. I'm like, nah.
Yeah. I like I remember it was like very early. I could feel your energy. You were just so in alignment. And I was like, this is your jam.
Yeah.
Like even when you do your lives now, when you say to me like, oh, sometimes I'm in my head, I'm like, I don't feel that from you when you're I feel like you're just channeling and you're just sharing your information and your wisdom,
Yeah, when I'm in my flow and I'm live, I'm brilliant and I'm dealing with people. I'm just like channeling and flowing. When I'm by myself trying to plan everything, then it's a nightmare. But when I show up, I'm good, and all the plans go out the window. Anyway.
Exactly, and that's what I find too. Like anything I think I have planned, and that's what this last year has really provided for me, because most of my my experiences are virtual. Like I've always been a telephone psychic, or like my mentorships and my sessions have always been through Zoom or by phone. I very rarely had done anything in person unless it was the first couple of years of my practice. I love being able to fly by the seat of my pants, but Spirit had showed me that someone's going to come to you and ask you to do in-person experiences. And we are giving you the inspiration to say yes. And I was like, dang, I have to be like grounded and in Hermosa Beach for 3 months. Like what? You know me, Travis. I like to just bye, I'm out of here. And so I was like, okay, well, we'll see if the invitation arrives. I'll say yes. And then sure enough, 3 days later, someone asked me to, lead this group in Redondo Beach and at someone's home. And I was like, I guess I'm saying yes, and it was weird because I was like, okay, I'm going to go in with this mentality of like, I have to have structure. These women are coming to me each week and I have to have everything laid out for me. And when I would arrive, Spirit would be like, no, but we're not doing that. We're going to work on this today. And I was like, oh yeah. I like that better. Like that actually feels better to me. And so that's how it's been. And I've been leading them for, I think we started last, when did we start? I don't know. I've been working with them for over 6 months, these women. And
amazing.
Yeah. And it's been so fun. And to even see them explore and expand and do readings. And it's been wild. It's been so fun to watch them, just, they're always like in the beginning, they're like, you want me to do what? Like day one. I'm like, so day one, we're doing this. And they're like, what? I'm like, oh, I didn't tell you we're doing psychic work, by the way. But now they're just like, oh my gosh, to see them like channel write messages for each other and like do mediumship readings for each other. They would, if I would have told them in the beginning that that's what they were going to be doing, they would have never signed up. But Spirit's like, no, this is what we're doing this week. And so I just let Spirit like lead.
What do you do on day one?
Well, day one, I take them through the basics of intuitive healing, which is grounding. Like I'm like, oh, I'm going to teach you how to meditate. I'm going to teach you how to get in your body. I'm going to teach you how to understand your energy. And then from there, we're going to go, bye. And so week one, we really like spent a lot of time in meditation, and they always have homework to take home with them. And I ask them to, when they commit to this, to commit to themselves every day, to tap into their energy and to lean into their guides. Because again, yes, we can come to the table once a week, but if you really want to expand and develop your language with your soul and with the world of spirit, it takes dedication, and it takes repetition, and it takes patience, and it takes, you showing up for yourself every day. Or some people like to only do it a couple of times a week, but I'm like, you can do that, but you'll see better results if you give yourself the opportunity every day.
So the more we ground and get in our bodies, I'm sure the more our psychic abilities, our intuitive abilities, all of our abilities wake up and we get more sensitive.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I've lived out of my body most of my life, and
Yeah.
it's a gift that I have. I have this beautiful ability to remote view,
Yes.
to time travel, to go
Mm,
it's wild. I didn't know that I was doing that my whole life until I started
mhm.
training. I was like, oh, I've been doing this my whole life. But then I had to learn how to be in my body,
Yeah.
because when we're in our body and we're actually physically in the body, our messages are the psychic abilities for myself, they're much stronger than when
Mhm.
I'm out of my body, and
Mhm.
I'm not getting sick,
Mm,
you know?
yeah.
And so I'm constantly having to do practices to remind myself to stay in body, because when I'm working, even though I'm in
Yeah.
Hermosa Beach, if I have a client in New York, I'm projecting my energy into New York, and I'm walking around their homes. I'm like,
Mm.
describing things for them. I'm like looking in the closets, looking under the bed. I'm all up in your business. And then I have to call my energy back into, this space, into my office.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so it's useful for when I'm
Mm,
working, but when I'm not working, I'm really trying to be intentional about being in the body.
mm.
I'm learning how to be in the body. And I'm only just figuring out how to do this even in the last 2 or 3 years,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, I was having these thoughts this morning about this exact subject, and in human design, he was told that we incarnate into these bodies from wherever. He calls it the personality crystal. So, 88 days before we're born, our physical body, our vehicle, calls in our personality crystal, like our consciousness, to come get into this body and have this experience. But I'm thinking like, oh, it makes so much sense. Like our bodies are of the earth and our minds aren't. They come from somewhere else, our personalities, so they're naturally not comfortable really being in this thing and like being
Hmm.
in this world. So then mentally we want to create all these things that aren't nature. We create the cities and these different spaces. I think I was like, oh, this makes sense that our minds want to mentally create a kind of like a fake world on this world so that they can feel more comfortable, and then we can be really like not comfortable with nature. But our body wants to be with nature. Our body wants to ground in the earth and the plants and everything that's here. So I just kind of saw this morning like, oh, it makes so much sense. This world that we've created is such a mental world because our mind is naturally not comfortable in this incarnation, in this experience that we're having, when we're living strictly from it and not living a holistic experience.
No, it's so true. I mean, you think of where our mind, and if we want to say our consciousness, is at any given moment throughout the day.
Yeah.
Think about, I have, you ever have that friend that's like dwelling over that conversation they had with some person
Yep.
5 years ago that they can't get over. You're like, your energy is in that space.
Mm,
And so I love, teaching people how to do, and it's essentially an energetic soul retrieval where you're calling your energy back into the present
mm,
moment, and you're bringing that energy back into the body, because we are I do believe that we are in all these places at once. I know that there's
mhm,
fragments of myself that are in different dimensions and different
mhm,
timelines at any given moment. My guides have showed me that. Like,
mm,
I'm like, what? I'm where? I'm who? I'm like, what? And so you think of we're having those experiences constantly with one another in our own personal realities, wandering around the world or dimensions and like all of these things, but we're also here to have this very physical earthly experience. But our soul knows that we can have these very like, we
uh-huh.
can like, you know what I mean? We're like, but why would I go there?
Yeah.
you know but I do think that is the deepest learning, is remembering nature and remembering
Mm,
Mother Earth, and that she really is the true creator
mm,
of everything that we get to experience here on this
yeah.
plane. It's such a beautiful thing. And we hear this all the time, right? Like, oh, protect Mother Earth and recycle and like all of these things, but there's so many messages that I receive just by walking barefoot and just
Mhm,
being present in my
mm,
own body, and the quickest thing for me to get a reset of
yeah.
myself, I'm an air sign, is for me to go out and get fresh air.
Mm,
I was just talking to my daughter Charlie about this the other day. I was like, she's a 12th house baby. I have everyone in my house are either 12th house or 8th house people.
mm.
And I'm like, when you are feeling any sort of way in your body, because you should see her chart, you would flip out.
I wanna
Um,
see it.
you got to see her chart. I was like, you're a water sign. You're a crab. I'm like, no wonder why when you come out of the ocean in the morning, you don't like going in, but you love coming out. She's happy and she feels good. And I'm like, that's like what your body is craving in order for you to feel cleansed and centered and to, Paul goes out there to surf. I mean, you're a surfer,
Yeah.
that's his church, like
Yeah.
he goes there to be with himself and to feel that connection between him and the earth. For me, I love walking out in nature. Like I said, I'm an air sign. I love being in fresh air. I love being underneath the trees. I crave it. And the more that I leave the city and I come back, I'm like, whoa, it's so
Yeah.
frenetic. It's so loud here.
Yeah.
And but that's truly what we need. And I've been trying to practice too, taking Cedar on a walk without my phone, because even if I have my phone in my pocket and I'm like listening to a podcast or whatever, I'm not really even connecting with him.
Yeah.
And so I've been doing that, and I'm noticing even a change in how he walks with me when I don't have that in my hand. It's like we're in unison with one another, where he's not pulling on me, I'm not tripping on him. We're in flow together.
Yeah.
And I think that we're learning how to um, uh, be in better relationship with nature and nature spirits and animals.
Yeah, God, for me, grounding was really difficult in the very beginning. And I just got back I did a week of this water therapy training.
Oh God, that is so you. But you're a Pisces, of course.
Well, and so this
Right?
is what I'm learning is I'm such a water person. Like water is my true medicine. It's what brings me
Exactly.
back to me. It's where I feel the most comfortable. And I wanted to tell you this because in the very beginning, so I'm in the pool and we're floating people, we're manipulating them. It's almost like body work in the water. So the first step is like, how do you get grounded in the water? Because I'm in the water, I just want to let go. I just want to float around and swim and whatever. But we have to be that extension of the earth and hold that grounding presence while you're floating somebody. And so they used such an amazing example that I never thought of. And he was like, seaweed is grounded. Seaweed is so rooted and like grounded into the earth, but at the base. And then once you get up top, everything else is like this in flow. And I used to feel ashamed when I would do like energy work with people and they would be like, I feel like I'm sitting on a surfboard, or I feel like you need grounding, whatever. And I'm like, oh, there's a way that I can actually, as a water sign, as a water person, be super grounded, but still in that flow and still in the medicine of water. It was really a beautiful experience.
Well, and that's a perfect example, like you said, like I'm going to be rooted like seaweed and allow myself to flow. And yeah, so again, I'm not surprised that you are a waterman because hello, and we know what we need intuitively. I'm sure you go out in the water anytime you need something, like Paul is like, if he can't get in water, I don't need to be around him. Even snow is the same thing. My kids, like Paul is water and snow. Snow is water, right? And I'm air. As long as I have fresh air, if I'm frustrated, I just go for a nice walk. I get out in fresh air and I'm just like, I feel so much better. I love feeling that connection between my body and the earth. I love laying in the dirt. I just love it. And I love being, with the earth. And I didn't even know what it meant to be grounded until I finally figured out what it meant for me to be grounded in my own body. Because I do think we all crave and need different things. I don't think there's like a right way for every single person.
Totally.
You know what I mean? I think we have to figure out what it is that we need for ourselves.
Yeah, I've been saying lately, like human design is a system that can just lead you back to your medicine, which is how do you get in your body? How do you get grounded? And we say in human design that the body is the life. That's Ra's line. Like the body is the life. This is what we're incarnated in. Learn it, trust it, and get in it.
Well, in my development and just, being in all the different, fields of thought and especially when you're developing psychically or mediumistically, a lot of people love being in those higher chakras, but they are so averse to looking at the earthly centers. They're like, I don't go there. And my work is all about the earthly centers. Like if you're going to work with me, we're going to travel through the earth from the base of the body, and we're going to go into the roots. But I do think that the wisdom comes from the center of the earth. I think like anytime I bring clients through their root system and into the earth, like they feel that connection to their ancestry. They get the messages from their loved ones. And I always say, ask for it, because I do believe that that's where it comes from. It comes in through our feet. We connect to the crown comes back down, but it starts from the soil of the
Yeah.
earth. And I remember hearing one of my friends reference our physical bodies as the soil. And I was like, oh my God, that felt so good. I'm like, it does. Like, I'm like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, I can resonate with that. Like our physical bodies are like the mulch
Yeah.
of the earth.
Well, we go back there,
Mm-hmm.
right? If we
Exactly.
decompose, so that that's
Yeah.
totally, I totally resonate with that.
God, am I decomposing?
You're gonna.
I'm like, but am I now?
You feel like it, and
Some days, right?
oh man. So when you are receiving messages, I know you work a lot of one-on-one, but you do groups and stuff as well. Do you get collective messages for like what's happening here or like what's going on? You do?
Travis, don't you remember in 2020 all the crazy messages I was getting? I was like, I will
I do.
never release these to the
That
public.
was more of a leading question for you to my real
I was
question is
like,
what's happening now? What are we going through? What
yeah,
messages are
no,
you getting?
I would get a lot of messages prior to 2020, and it felt like these were messages I did not want to know, because I was like, what am I supposed to do with this information? And I'm a Libra. I don't like to rock the boat, but I was getting very clear messages of what was happening in consciousness and what was going to be happening over a series of years. And you and I have also talked about this, like
Yeah.
it's 2027 is like where I feel like we're going to get like start to get some fresh air, but I try not to overthink the collective messages like I did in 2020, because again, when I was receiving them in early 2020, it was a lot. I don't know if you remember, Travis, I wasn't sleeping. I was getting all this channeled information about what was going to take place in the collective, where the source came from in the collective, what was the greatest learning in the collective. And I was like, I am not telling people what to do, because it was, there was the question of, do we do the shot? Do we not do the shot? Do we, like all of these things. And what was coming through was, at that time was like, this is an important time for you to get to know yourself so that you know what's right for you at any given moment. Don't follow the herd, follow your heart. And so that's still sort of the same messages that have been coming through for myself and what I'm understanding of what's happening in the collective. But, it is an election year. So as you know, I'm like, so I try not to, don't get me in trouble. I'll talk to you off air. I don't like to plug fear through the collective. That's not my job. I don't like to do that.
No,
And I think that
understand.
sometimes when somebody gets a little bit of information, the fear that they already have programmed in their body becomes a storm. And if we want to be really useful to ourselves and the collective, is we can find our own inner peace as much as possible, even within the storm. We're actually serving the whole much better than following the herd in fear.
Yeah.
Spirit showed me that fear is the actual virus. So think of it that way.
Yeah. I definitely see that. I've been saying recently that like you are the medicine that the world needs and the world wants right now. And the only way you can get there is by, deconditioning, finding out who you are, grounding, embodying, like, just the more you can be you, the more medicine you're bringing to everyone and healing and all this good stuff.
Exactly. That's exactly the way that my guides will show it to me, is like, if we take care of ourselves, we know the parts of ourselves that we've been ignoring. Maybe it's addiction. Maybe it's, you think of all these things. Maybe it's trauma, maybe whatever it is, right? We've developed a lot of ways to cope. I know I did. I used to love to drink. I loved Adderall. I loved to escape from my body. I loved all of those things when I was younger. I was angry. I was upset. I didn't speak to my dad for 15 years. That in itself, just my dad relationship really impacted who I was as a person, whether I wanted to believe it or not. Right. It impacted my relationship with my friends, with my family, with my husband, with my children. And I knew I was going to have to look at it at some point, but I wasn't ready for a very long time until, do you remember when I went to New Mexico with Allie? When we were making the drums?
Yeah.
So that was I think it was either in 2020 or 2021. It now came to a head, and my loved ones in spirit were like, you have to look at this. You can no longer ignore it. You have to look at this part. And so that set me on that whole journey of healing my heart as it relates to one of the most major people in my life,
Yeah.
you know? And so we know the things that we need to take care of and the things that we avoid. And how do we avoid?
Yeah.
Food, alcohol, sex, drugs, like whatever, you know, whatever, staying busy, working really hard.
Mm.
We're now at this time and space and consciousness where we can't ignore those things anymore. Like the energy is not allowing that to happen. Pluto came in and is like, hello, I'm here. We're going to uproot everything. We're going to look under the skirt. We're going to look under the bed. We're going to look in the basement. And it's happening not to scare you, but with intention and with purpose, because we're not meant to carry it. And so I think that when people are spending a lot of energy worried about what somebody else is doing and getting angry about it,
Yeah.
that's your opportunity to actually look at yourself and your
Yeah.
own fears and in the ways in which you can change your own life for the betterment of yourself and by way helping the collective.
Mm.
So we got to look at our side of the street.
Ooh, mic drop on that one.
Oh yeah, girl.
Yeah. I forget, like I feel like our stories are so similar. Like we're very different, but in a way, like our timeline and our stories, and like, you know, I've been working through that thing with my dad that you
Oh,
helped me
good.
with, and oh God, there's so much I want to say to that. I said in my class that I'm teaching the other day, like, are you ready to look? Because in my eyes, human design is just a mirror for you to look at.
Absolutely. It
And
all
it's like, if you're
is.
not ready to look, then hey, nothing's going to happen. But if you're ready to take a look, oof,
It's
you know,
not as
it will show
scary as
you.
what we think it is, though, too,
No,
right? It really isn't. Like we
no,
feel like it's going to be really scary, and then we start to realize, wow, there's other people that go through this,
yeah,
and you're right. Like we're drawn to people and experiences with purpose and with intention. Like, of
yeah,
course, you and I would be aligned because we
yeah,
have matching energy. We have that same connection as it relates to our dad. And I now have a wonderful relationship with my dad that I never thought I was going to have in this lifetime and maybe not even the next one. You know, I was like, well, we'll probably figure it out in a couple lifetimes. But
Mm,
it just took me wanting to, I had to pause and just look at things for what it really was, not through my pain,
mm,
not through the protection that I built around myself. Because once I started to dissolve that, I was able to see actually all the wonderful things that this man had brought into my life that I chose not to um, look at or I guess feel, because I was hurt and I felt
yeah,
abandoned and I needed to protect myself. But once I released that wall of needing to be protected, and that was by way of like my loved ones in spirit helped me through that. My
mm,
dad's mom in spirit, my dad's
mm,
dad in spirit, my great grandparents on his side, like they led me through that. And it wasn't comfortable. You know, I had to reach out to my dad, and my grandmother would say, "Hey, you need to call your dad. He fell and hurt his
mm.
arm, and I need you to check on him." And I'd be like, "Grandma, he doesn't want me to tell him messages. Like, I can't. You're making this very uncomfortable for me." You know, and she'd be like, "Nope, nope. You need to call. You need to call him." And I'd be like, I wouldn't call. I would text like, "Dad, are you okay? Did you hurt your shoulder when you fell?" And he'd be like, "How did you know that?" I'm like, "Your mom in spirit told me." And he's like, "Whoa." And so I just felt like every time I'd give him a message, he would push me away.
Mm,
But what I didn't understand is it wasn't he was pushing me away. He was realizing that the stuff that I was sharing with him was the part of himself that he turned off. He's very psychic as well.
mm,
And I learned so much about my dad after we started doing healing work.
mm,
I thought he was rejecting me this whole time. And he was like, I was rejecting myself. And he was telling me
mm.
that he also became a healer. I did not know this.
Wow.
And he, one day, because in his relationship, she, you know, her religious background didn't, you know, it didn't align for their marriage. So one day he went out into the desert and buried all this healing stuff, and he never looked
Oh,
back. So I always thought it was me that he was rejecting,
yeah,
but I was just a mirror of what he was rejecting within himself.
yeah.
And so again, yeah, we are mirrors for one another, you know,
Mhm.
and I always say if somebody triggers you, it's just an opportunity to go, well,
Mm,
why is this triggering me? Like, okay, there's something in my body or in my aura that is getting agitated or feeling uncomfortable. And I love to do healing work around it, energy healing, because we're not meant to feel that. We're meant
mm,
to feel expansive and in flow and abundant. Like that's our most natural state. And so spirit will always give me an opportunity to show my clients, like, hey, you know, you can just let it go.
mm.
It really is that easy, but our human mind thinks
Yeah,
it has to be hard,
yeah.
right? And so, yeah, it's just like we said, it's you can't avoid it. You have to, I guess you can avoid it. You can avoid it, but then you'll probably not feel in alignment or in flow in your relationships, in your
Yeah.
work, in your joy, in your, if you want to say, in your purpose. Like you probably won't feel that sense of expansion in your body if you're ignoring things that are wanting to be released.
Yep. Gosh.
Mhm.
Yeah. I had the same experience. I didn't talk to my dad for 4 years, but we always had a kind of a rocky relationship after my parents got divorced. And then I would blame him for so much stuff in my life. I had all this blame built up. And when I started doing my own work, that's really what started to subside. And I realized, like, wait a second, if you really believe in yourself, if you start getting in touch with yourself, then you can't really blame anyone for anything. Which was like, it feels like you have to.
That's a weird transition, right?
It's a hard one because
Yeah.
I was making excuses for my life, why I was feeling a certain way or why it wasn't going the way I wanted. Like I had all these excuses and I had all these people to blame. And then doing all this work and working with you and working with other people, you really led me to this place of like, you can't make up what you want someone else to be. And then when they're not that way, take it personally or blame them for something. So I really saw like, wow, I really wanted these things from my dad that I wasn't getting because it wasn't him. And I had created what he was supposed to be for me in my mind, which is like so not it's not good for anybody. It's not real. And so I finally got to a point where I was like, look, I may never speak with my dad again. And you know what? I'm okay. I don't need anything from him. He is his own person. And I release all of that. I'm okay with where I'm at in myself. And that made me okay with the relationship with my father. And then we had done a session, and I think the day after or 2 days after, and you told me like, hey, your dad's coming through and he's telling you, hey, dude, it's time to heal this relationship. Like you need to heal this relationship. It's really causing issues in your life. And you showed me that he was working on my dad too. My dad was aware that it was time. And then not like literally maybe the next day or 2 days later, my dad reached out to me and said, hey, you want to go get lunch after 4 years?
Chills.
And that's when I was like, I doubt everything, I'm very skeptical. I'm like, prove it to me. I need to know the truth. That was a moment in my life where I was like, this shit works.
It does.
This is real. I've worked on myself so much. I've been working on healing this relationship with my father just on my own end in zero communication.
On ourselves.
Yes, on ourselves. It comes
just
from
will happen
you.
naturally just by you working on yourself. They will feel the energetic exchange.
Yep.
And that's what's really beautiful about it.
Yeah.
Like you can just work on yourself.
Yeah.
It's wild.
And it manifests.
It does.
Into reality, and it can happen very quickly.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I see it happen not only in my own life, but I see it happen with my clients and I am not somebody who ever was comfortable in talk therapy. I was very awkward for me. Like I'm one of those people back then where I wouldn't feel safe enough to share my secrets. And like, it's just the way I was raised. It was, we said it's the conditioning, it's my limiting beliefs were in the way. And so when I found energy healing or intuitive energy healing specifically, and I was like, oh, wow, I can just work on these parts in my heart, like my heart to heart connection. And I can just sit with what's coming up with me. And I thought in the beginning I was going to be like, Dad, from my heart, you abandoned me, and Spirit was like, no. Look at the part of you that feels abandoned, like sit with that little Jessica. And I would see versions of myself in my meditation. So whether it was 3 years old, 10 years old, 18 years old, 35 years old. And I was like, oh my gosh. And it's the same thing, right? I was creating this illusion of what I felt a father figure should be.
Yeah.
And it was like, then they were showing me his capacity to show up in this experience is based on his upbringing.
Yeah.
And then I got to see some of the stuff that he went through as a young child and what his dad went through and what his dad, like they were showing me all the generational, if I want to say trauma, because there was a lot of trauma, there's a lot of abuse and things like that. And so I was like, oh, wow, he could have never showed up for me in that way. He didn't know how to. Okay. So again, I don't have to blame him.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to fill in my own self and remind myself of why I'm not abandoned and how clearly I'm supported. Look at all these loved ones that are here for me. I have wonderful friends and family. I'm good. And it was the forgiveness, and forgiveness is a huge one, right? Like when we start to forgive, that frequency of not of being in like anger and all, it is such a heavy weight on our auric field. But once I started work on forgiving myself, okay, I forgive myself for having this thought in this moment, blah, 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 I talk to myself in a different way. It was so interesting. Like all of a sudden he would text me, hey, I'm thinking about you. And I'm like, what the heck? And I think Travis, I've shared with you, I think we've talked about it, right? My aunt, she was like my second mom. Did we talk about this and how she told me she didn't agree with the things that I was doing? She was like, I'll pray for you.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay, so I have an aunt I do have my aunt. She was like my second mom. I idolized her as a child. I just was like, I was like, I just loved her so much. But when I started doing this work, she was not okay with it. She didn't agree with it. She had her own opinions about it, and it did hurt me, And so that was my dad and her were the two relationships that my loved ones in spirit were asking me to work on. But I was never going to be able to call her and talk to her because her views were so different than mine. And not that mine are right and hers are wrong. They're just different. And I was okay with just them being different. I didn't need to try to convert her, and I didn't need her to try to convert me. I just wanted to have a loving relationship with my aunt who I looked at as a mom. Right. And and I didn't realize how much it was affecting me until I sat with my inner child. And I was like, oh, she's really feeling abandoned. See the same word, abandoned. My aunt abandoned me. My dad abandoned me. So I started doing the heart to heart work with her. And I would hear her say, I'm just trying to protect you. I want you to be safe. And I'm like, but I am safe. Thank you. But I'm okay. You don't have to worry about me. I swear to God, Travis, I did like 3 sessions with my guides, just healing that understanding between her and I. And I was at my desert house and she called me crying hysterically. I miss you. I love you. I was like, you can't make it up. I'm working on myself and my own parts that I have built to protect myself. And because I'm giving myself the tender loving care, little Jessica, I'm listening to her voice and what she's saying. It's transforming my relationships in real time. Didn't have to have the awkward conversation with my aunt, who is a very strong born again Christian. Didn't have to have it. She felt it. She felt how I love her. I felt how she loves me. She felt the energy. She reached out. Wild. It's incredible.
It's like I wouldn't believe it unless it happened to me, and now you see it so clearly. It's really amazing.
And it just goes to show you that how we're all connected. Right. Like, and we're all experiencing. I mean, look at the story you've shared. We have the very similar story. We didn't have a connection with my connection with my dad was a lot longer. I'm a stubborn bee. Let me tell you, I was like, I'm good. And I look back and I'm like, man, I was giving him the Heisman all these years. He was trying to like connect with me. I was like, no, I'm like, wow, she's stubborn, but I get that from him. But yeah, like all those years and I could have addressed it sooner, but maybe I wasn't meant to. I don't know, but I did. And it happened very quickly. And now we're in a wonderful place. And now I'm working on other parts of myself, because I love this feeling. I love being in flow. I love when things are synchronistic. I love that I love that I'm enjoying my work. And so by me putting in this work on my personal life, and seeing how it's presenting in my physical life, like I'm seeing what's happening and manifesting around me. I'm like, I'm not going to stop. Like, this is great. I'm like, I'm going to keep working on myself and self-development, spiritual development and integration and reflection, all of the things, because I've seen what it's done in my life in just a short amount of time. It's only been 7 years and I'm going to be 47.
Jesus.
40 years of my
so
life, I've
fast.
been walking around angry and annoyed, insecure. Oh, all the talk that I used to say to myself was like so bad. And I'm like unraveling all of that now.
Do you feel like you're 7 years old? Because I tell people I'm 4 because it happened 4 years ago for me.
Okay, you know what's funny? For a long time, I would say I was in kindergarten. I'm like, I'm in kindergarten. But now I feel like I'm 14.
Mm,
And the reason why I feel like I'm 14 now is because I'm healing my inner teenager.
mm,
And I've been doing that for, when Charlie turned 14, it
uh,
ignited something in me that I was like, oh shoot. And I was like, oh God, she was really angry. My 14-year-old self was really irritated
yeah.
and didn't feel like she could use her voice
Mm,
and didn't feel. And so how funny is it that Spirit's like, now we need you to create another podcast all by
mm,
yourself because we're going
yeah.
to heal your voice. And I'm like, really? And I'm like, oh, that's why my
Mm,
14-year-old self wants to be heard. Right. And so now I've graduated from 5. I'm not 5 years old anymore. I'm 14. So look out. And
mm,
she's so funny. I'm like, wow, she was a character. She loved to make people laugh, but she was also very angry.
yeah.
And so now I'm
Classic
working through it.
manifester.
Is it? Is it?
Well,
Really?
you guys are the rulers and the holders of the throat chakra. Every manifestor has a defined throat. So
Mhm.
there's so much that comes up of using your voice, because that's literally you're here to use your voice. You're here to manifest what you want, but you get rules put on you. People try to control you. Yeah, I feel too big or I take up too much space. There's so much manifestor conditioning around using the throat, which is funny because that's literally what you're here to do.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
wild. Yeah, all those things you said, I'm like, yeah, don't give me rules. Yeah, don't
Yeah.
tell me what to
Don't
do.
tell me
Don't
what
put me
to
in a box. Like, I'm like, no, it's not going to happen.
Yeah. Cue anger.
I know whenever somebody says like, oh, you can't do that, not just to me, but to anyone else, I was like,
Yeah.
watch us.
Yeah.
Wait, I can't do what? Hold on. I'm going to try that really quick. Yeah. It's so funny. I'm such a rebel. I have a rebellious spirit in that way.
For sure. Yeah. As one of the things I absolutely love about you. What are you working on now? Is it still voice stuff or?
Yeah, it's still, I feel like it's my voice and then also my personal power. Meaning like just feeling more confident in bigger spaces.
Uh,
Which is funny that you just said that, like, oh, taking up too much space. I need to shrink my space. And so now I'm sort of in a new, a new layer of my healing. Um, every time I'm presented with new opportunities and where my guides are showing me I'm going, I go, there's a part of me that goes, oh, shoot, that, even though I know I'm going to do it anyway, but it's like, oh gosh, there's another layer I got to work with. And so I've been really working with that inner teenager, and feeling more comfortable in public platforms and with bigger groups and just putting myself out there in ways that I have not done in a long time. Like honestly, I'm really cozy in my office space on Zoom and on the telephone. Like I love it there. That's my jam. I love group classes online, but it's there. I'm getting that push to be more out in the public and being in my community, which has been really cool. So I've set that intention, and all the invitations are coming in, and saying yes to most of them, saying maybe later to some others. And so, yeah, that's what I'm working through right now. Like I've really been enjoying working with in-group and person group experiences. I was kind of resistant in the beginning, but I've actually been really loving it. It's been so fun. So I'm calling in more group experiences and yeah, that's it really. What about you?
I have one more question for you.
Okay.
Where do you think most of your anger came from?
I think it came from early childhood, not being able to express, right? Like it was sort of
Not being allowed or not knowing how?
not being allowed.
Yeah.
I knew how.
Yeah.
That wasn't the problem.
Yeah, you're born with that. Yeah.
That wasn't the problem. When I was young, I remember being really little and I was a performer. I loved the attention. I loved dancing. I loved being on stage. But in my culture and in my upbringing, I had, Filipino culture, Hispanic culture, and then also military culture. And then also, just, I guess my age, my generation, it was very much be seen, not heard. And then, me having this intuitive knowing, I would say things, it'd be like, don't do that, don't say that. So over time, I slowly started to shrink my voice. And then obviously when junior high hits, I feel like that's an awkward time for teenage, for preteens and teens. And so then you really start to, close your energy down. And so a lot of my irritability or my frustration comes from that. Like I just felt like I couldn't say what I wanted to say. I was like, why do I have to be in this school? I don't even want to be here. It was just like, and I couldn't share it. My parents didn't have, one, the time, and two, it was like, this is how it is. No questions asked. We're not talking about that. And I'd be like, oh, and so I'm unlearning that, like even when I do mediumship readings, it takes me a minute because I'm having to ask the spirit world questions that I was raised not to ask, and so those are the things that I'm like unraveling, and I'm realizing there's a lot of frustration around that. I had to give up a lot of things. When I was a teenager, when I was 14, I had to give up a lot of things because of finances, and there was a lot of drama going on in my house at that time. And so I wasn't allowed to express it. So I just pushed it down. And so those things are starting to come up now. It's like, oh, shoot, I was really frustrated that I had to give up all my activities that allowed me to perform. I'm a Leo moon. I'm meant to be on stage. But isn't it funny that I'm like, I don't want to be on stage.
Yep.
Right. And so there's parts of me that I'm like, oh, I know that I'm meant to go there. And so I want to go there, but I also understand that with a larger presence, there is more conversation. There are more eyes on you. There are more opinions. There are all these things, and I'm still human. And so I'm like working through those layers to feel more comfortable in those spaces. So to hold the energy that I know I'm meant to hold.
Yeah.
And so I've been working through, with one of my healers, to clear that frustration energy and that anger energy and that clearing the throat and my solar plexus, this the last 6 months. And so it's been helping me big time, because now when I think about going on stage, it doesn't make me feel anxious like it did before. That charge.
Oh yeah.
It's not as like, it would make my freaking jaw hurt. I'd be like,
Yeah.
and now I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I can see that. It doesn't feel as potent as it did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful. It's funny how we perceive ourselves too, and how other people see us.
I know.
And the things we're working on, a lot of times people would never know like that you're working on that, it's just like, oh,
Absolutely.
Jess just shows up. She's, you're just good to go.
Oh, I
You
show up
hold space so
scared.
well.
I do.
Yeah.
I show up in fear. Like I put on a good poker face,
Yeah.
but what's going on in my body is pure fear. Like I do it scared. But I
Yeah.
have a lot of warrior energy in my
Yeah.
life. It's in my upbringing. It's in my my ancestry. And so I show up, but my heart's pounding, my blood is boiling, like my spleen is just,
Yeah.
it's just like working. And so even with that, I'm like trying to nurture my body in a way that's, I try to listen to it better now, because in the beginning I did not listen to it. It was just like, I'm doing it anyway. I'm doing it anyway. And now I'm just trying to listen to the rhythms of my body, listen to the inner child, and be like,
Yeah.
okay, I gotta, like, don't push her off the edge. Just hang out with her for a second. don't just like shove her, like just talk to her about it for a minute.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, but I do a lot of things scared, Travis.
Yeah.
A lot of things.
Yeah. I mean, thanks for saying that. I think that's such a valuable thing for everyone to be reminded of, myself included. And I've heard, I've listened to podcasts, and they're talking about all like the most famous performers, the most famous actors, and they all say the same thing. There was one guy who would throw up before every performance.
Oh,
I forget who it was, but some famous, where they're so brilliant, but before they go to do their thing, you're still dealing with those
Oh,
feelings.
yeah. I remember when I was young and I would do dance competitions, and I would be like, same, I'd get so nauseous before, and
Yeah.
it would take me a minute for my body to relax in performance, because
Yeah.
I was just so much adrenaline in the body. And I think now too, that now that I know my energy and like how my aura works too, I feel like that's also, I'm also picking up on the crowd. I didn't realize that before. And so I'm even trying to like work with that and master that. Like, okay,
Yeah.
that, yeah, my energy is expanded in this moment, but that's not my feeling. Like
Yeah.
I like maybe in my own energy,
Yeah.
but I like to, I'm very stretchy and all the things. And sometimes I'm stretched out when I don't realize I'm stretched out. And
Yeah.
so again, I'm still like, mastering that part of my aura,
Yeah.
just exercising it in a different way.
Well, and I wonder, because we both are open solar plexus, which is our emotional system, open sacral, which is the majority of the energy on the planet. And what lives in the solar plexus is nervousness. That's like kind of the fear that lives with our emotions. So when I used to do acting stuff when I was younger, and I remember going on auditions, I would be so incredibly nervous. And I think because we're open there, we're so sensitive to the nervousness that we can actually feel it in a different way in our body. And I remember my body would literally, like, I would kind of shake before I was so nervous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then also, like, my eyes will be open, but like my eye, when you're gonna pass out, how it'll kind of like shadow in, but your eyes are open. That will happen too, where I'm like, oh my God, I'm gonna pass out, but I'm not. I'm not gonna pass out. But it looked like I wonder what it looks like to the person staring at me.
Yeah.
She's not behind the eyes, folks. She's like, don't. But yeah, that shaking feeling. And sometimes I get that shaking feeling when if I'm in a group and I'm doing readings, it's that same feeling. It runs through my body, and it's like, it reminds me of like a dog where you just kind of have to like shake it off.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting how I didn't realize about the solar plexus and the sacral, that mine was open, but that makes sense to me. Yeah.
And your root. And it's, I mean, where we're open is where we want to take people. And, it's our biggest areas of learning and of wisdom. And I avoided emotions for so long, but after these 2 years of literally just being taught emotions, that's what my last 2 years have been all about. I'm understanding, like, oh, I'm meant to take people here. I'm meant to help people in their emotions, and you do all your grounding work and similar stuff.
That's wild that you just said that, because that's literally where I anchor all of my work. And it's literally, we start at the root, sacral, solar plexus. That's it. Like I'm like, the other ones are going to open up naturally. Like I literally anchor there, that makes so much sense. See, we know what we need.
It's all the same. Human design, all this stuff it's all the same. It's just different languages and different modalities, I guess.
That's wild.
Yeah.
So what's going on with you? What's new?
Wow, that's so much is new.
I hear you're calling in a new relationship. Is that true?
It was true.
It was last week. It was. That ship has sailed.
I've gone through such a portal. I was going through a transit. In human design, we can see where the planets are activating you. And Neptune was in the 36 in our emotional center, which hooked up to my 35. So I have an open throat and open solar plexus. And during this transit, energetically, they're defined. They get colored in. So I had emotional manifestor type energy that I was dealing with for the last 2+ years, simultaneously going through a breakup that was really hard. So I was just learning about the solar plexus and emotions, and I'm on the other side of it now, and it feels so good. But what I really feel like I'm being called towards is teaching sexuality, relationships, and tantra, which I've been really into recently, and trying to find that voice and trying to understand how I can start to share about those topics in a way that's not gonna like freak myself out, or like I'm really battling with the mind stuff.
What are you
like you were saying with the fear.
I totally see you talking about all that stuff. You're like, I just don't want to freak people out. Is that what it is?
It's just fear that in me, fear of being weird, fear of not being accepted, fear of being a man in the space talking about sexuality with women. I feel like I don't want to come off as inappropriate, which I don't give off that vibe anyway. So there's a lot of interesting things I think I'm really dealing with just being a man in a space that's kind of dominated by women, but understanding so deeply what women need and the sexual power, the power of orgasm, the power of the sacral and the solar plexus and desire, and how when you wake that up in all of us, that's where our true power comes from, but it is scary for me to even say that still. So there's a lot happening in my life that's keeps steering me back, because these are the invitations that I get all the time. And then doing this new water therapy work that I'm so obsessed with, and feeling how sensual you are in water. Like water is pure sex. It's like, it's such a tantric charged sensual space to be in. So everything that's happening in my life right now is really pointing me towards like, we need to wake up our sexuality. We need to get comfortable with this part of ourselves. And in that, wow, we can really build a foundation of love for ourselves and manifestation and, you know, all of
Absolutely.
the intimacy, which I really think is the number one thing we're missing as humans is intimacy. And we can't be intimate with each other until we've found that within ourselves. And so the water and the human design and all the stuff I'm doing is really like, wow, how can I get people to become more intimate with themselves so that they can then bring that to their relationships and their life.
That's so wild that you said that, because that's essentially the work that I do in womb work. Right. And I just had this, well, you know, my fear of water, Travis, we've talked about it. You try to get me on the surfboard. I'm like, not happening.
Or getting in the pool, just so you know. I don't know
Yeah,
if you know
right.
that's
But like, I'm
happening
like, oh my God. So with womb work, it's yes, that is where everything resides. Like all of our power comes from the womb, whether you're male or female, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's like it's
Yeah.
anchored in the sacral. And I had this really incredible healing experience with I do spinal energetics with this woman named Amanda. It's a new modality that I've been trying, because with 12th house babies, we the best way for us to tap into our body is through somatic work. And I was
What's
working
12th house again? What is that?
the 12th house in astrology.
Is that just like
It's
super
Pisces. It's the house of
spiritual
Pisces. Yeah,
space?
it's the
Yeah,
house.
okay.
It's the Pisces house. Yeah,
Okay.
it's your house.
I did.
And which means like if you have activations and planets in those places, you likely hold your emotions in and don't process them fully, which is my whole life. Like I'm like, it just push it down,
Yeah.
down. And I've only been unearthing it the last 4 years. Like I'm like, oh, okay. I'm like becoming comfortable with emotions. And
Yeah.
so again, we have a lot of similar things that we're
Yeah.
working through currently. But while I was in that, before I arrived for the session, because I always get downloads for things that are going to happen, you know, in the days prior to my healing work, I was shown my near-death experience from when I was a young child, and I nearly drowned in the pool. They had to do mouth to mouth, like the whole thing. And
Oh,
so,
wow.
yeah, my guides were showing me that I needed to go back to that time and heal from that place, because the element of water wanted to work with me. But I am so terrified of water, but water represents the emotions. It represents our consciousness. So it's like giving me all these messages about the water. So before I even showed up for the session, I was sweating because I was like, oh my God. I was like, okay, so I know this is
You're
what we're going to be
already
working
wet.
on. Well, be gentle on me. I'm like, can I put on a life jacket? I was laying on the table, like life jacket. But it was such a beautiful journey, because she just allows you to go on your own experience. Like she plays this music, she's working on your energetic spot, like your spine energetically, but you really go on your own journey. And I was brought back to the pool, brought back into the element of water. And then all of a sudden I felt like I was like in the deepest parts of the ocean. And in the vision, I tried to go up really fast because I was freaking out in the vision. And I heard the element of water just like, no, just relax, like lay into me, relax into me. And I was like, what? You know, I could see like the light at the top. And finally I felt my body relax, and I was getting all of these downloads about intimacy, about all of this stuff. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is another layer. And so as I was coming out of that experience, what I was hearing was, we need you to work with the element of water, whether it's you going into the river or you going into the ocean, you becoming comfortable with the element of water, i.e. your emotions, i.e. your womb, i.e. your sensuality, all the things, right? And so I get off that session, and I was so drained after. And like 15 minutes later, my friend Alexis, she's the photographer that I use for everything. She sends me a text. She goes, I had this vision. I need to put you in water, and we need to, let's go to, and I was like, oh shoot, she's going to put me in the ocean because she's from PV.
Yeah.
And I was like, and I said yes, because I knew I had to say yes, but I was like, oh my God, she's going to put me in the middle of the ocean. And she goes, but we're not going to go to the ocean. I'm going to take you to a river in Ojai. And we did this whole photo shoot there. That was really a ceremony for myself, but I was so exhausted after. And it wasn't even like I was swimming in the river. I was moving across the river. I was navigating, I was floating in the river, but I was like, this is a thing. Like, I can see how I was trying to relax. I couldn't relax. Like I was feeling all this tension leave my body. When I came home, I was like so emotional because I was feeling stuff leave my field. So we're doing a lot of similar work. We're in sync.
We're super in sync. I was like, no, I didn't even realize how much
yeah,
yeah, seriously. I was shown that I'm really here to bring water medicine to people, to get
Oh, I could
people
see that.
into the
Mhm.
water, and it makes so much sense to me. And God, at this training, I was there for a week, and we learned so much cool stuff. And one of the things he would say is like, our nervous system is aquatic. It's
Mhm.
encapsulated in spinal fluid, and I'm like, whoa, that's crazy. And then he's like,
Well, you
water
think
is
it
really
too.
the
Like
what?
utero. Like you in
Yeah,
utero, we're in the
yeah,
womb. And I was
yeah,
brought back to utero in the womb, and I was
yeah.
like, oh my gosh, it's so true, and so cool. You're gonna have to tell me more about the class that you're taking, or that you
Yeah, and I have to do 100 sessions. So,
oh,
yeah,
you
we're
wait,
gonna get.
you can lead a session?
Yeah,
Can
so
I
I was
can I
certified to give sessions. I don't
okay,
have to take you under.
okay, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do
Yeah,
it. I'm gonna
I'm
commit.
telling you, it's like the most powerful thing I have ever experienced. And I went back in one of my sessions because we were giving and receiving the entire time. I was there for 7 days. We were in the pool from 7:30 in the morning till 8 at night with like food breaks in between. So I was just
Wow.
like in my element. And in one of these sessions, um I can hold my breath for a long time. I'm very comfortable in water, so you can get very kind of crazy with these with this type of work. So I put on a nose plug, and then two people were like manipulating me, moving me around, and at one point I was cross-legged upside down, and they were holding me under the water, and then they came and hugged me on both sides. So I'm upside down in the pool, eyes closed, relaxed, and there's pressure all around me, and I went like straight back to the womb.
Oh,
And I was
wow.
like, whoa, this is, and what I saw for myself was like, I don't want to breathe. I'm so comfortable in here. I want to be in the water. It's warm. It's, and when I started to have to breathe, that's when all my pain started. That's when all my uncomfortable stuff started to happen. So I really went back. I was like, oh, I think I knew that it was going to be difficult being on land because I'm such a water person.
Mhm.
But then I was shown like, this is what you're here to bring to other people. Like it's not normal to be this, well, not normal, but I know so many people who are afraid of the water. A lot of my work, as even in my surf lessons, are getting people comfortable with being in the water. The earth is pretty much all water.
All
Our
water.
bodies are
Our
all
bodies are all
water.
water. Yeah. Oh,
It's
wow.
there's so much, and I think we've been conditioned to fear it, for control, for other things, not to come back to ourselves and find our own power, which lives in water. And even in the plant medicine space, they would say water was our first medicine because it actually feeds the plants that are other medicines, and it feeds everything. And if you think of the cold plunge, oh, you're in water. Sauna, oh, there's an element of water. You're sweating now. Our sexuality, there has to be water present. It's just, I started to really understand and see how powerful water is and how obvious it is and how underground these modalities still are, which is like,
I
what?
know. I
Like
know.
getting someone in a pool and floating can be, and just staying there floating can be a psychedelic experience for somebody, like easily. And we're not that aware of it yet. So I'm just so excited to bring this knowledge to my people.
Did you get emotional when they were holding you like that?
Oh, just
I
the
did.
whole week was a roller coaster
It's
of
making me feel
emotion.
emotional, like when you were even describing it, just being held in that way.
I went to I go to other dimensions in
Mhm.
the water, and I was shown, there's those graphs of like the 3D, 4D, 5D, whatever, and it's like up and up, and there's these different dimensions. I was shown that, and then mirrored in the water, our body wants to go to, and it didn't show me what the numbers were or anything, but it was like different dimensions as we go down. The body wants to get closer to the center of the earth. The mind is the one that wants to go to the 6D whatever
Mhm.
spiritual realm. And with water, just taking your head under the surface, you can go to those deeper dimensions into the earth. And so that's why I was like, whoa, this is such a trip. Taking someone in a relaxed state, because when we're in water, most of the time we're trying to survive because we can drown in it. It's not safe for us to fully relax. So when you have someone else holding you and you can completely go into a relaxed meditative state, and then someone takes your head underneath the water, it's like it's like blast
Mhm.
off but down, if that makes sense. Like I go to
Wow.
different dimensions.
Yeah,
It's wild.
I love meditating. Well, because I do a lot of my salt baths is where I do a lot of my meditating,
Yeah,
and it's
yeah.
it's a different level
It's a
of
conductor, right? It's an
the conductor of
amplifier of
energy, 100%.
everything.
Yeah, 100%. Wow. Okay, well, I'm gonna have to try that. Isn't
Yeah.
that weird that I feel okay to even say that? Because before I'd be like, no, but that sounds amazing. I could totally see
Yeah.
that for you too. That makes so much sense.
Mm.
I mean, like even like look at your little logo or your
Oh yeah,
branding.
I'm in.
That's you.
It was the time for me to understand my connection with water, because I was a surfer. I thought I liked to surf. I free dive. I thought I just liked to free dive, and then I was shown like, no, it's actually the water that is the common denominator that connects you with your comfort and your medicine, and meeting people. The guy that ran the whole thing, we were just like brothers, and he was like, welcome. What did he call it? He was like, Aquatics Anonymous, and like the Fellowship of Water. Like there's people who just feel more comfortable in water than we do on land, and that's
Yeah.
me for sure. I feel so much more comfortable in water than I do on land, and when they put me under, I'm like, I don't want to come up. I want to stay down here. I'm more relaxed when I'm at the bottom of the pool than when I'm out. Yeah, fascinating stuff.
It's wild, the synchronicities that that we're both like sort of navigating, because even in that vision with her, I was brought back into utero, and I could feel everything that my mom was experiencing, the sounds, the emotions. That I was so like, it was like all these down, and I started to realize like, oh my gosh, I am not who I think I am.
Mm.
And I was like, this whole time I thought that I like this and I like that, and I was like, no, that was the information I was picking up in my mom's belly, and it was such a crazy
Wow.
experience for me, because I was like, holy crap, I like, what do I like? Like, you know what I mean? Like, what do I like this? Like, it was such a like mind-blowing thing. 'Cause it's like, oh my God, we have been being programmed and conditioned since conception,
Yeah.
And yeah, that's like a bigger topic, but really, really cool. I can't wait for us to go to coffee and talk about more about this.
Yes. All right. Where can people find you?
In the water. So find me in the water in 3 feet.
Well, then it can be so gentle.
Well, it's going to have to be, Travis. You're going to have to bring me into this.
I'll use my intuition.
Yes,
we're not planning.
I'm saying yes to this. We're starting in the shallow end. But again, the synchronicity, like, see, like what did I tell you? My guides were like, you need to have a better relationship with water. Here you are saying this. I'm obviously going to say yes to the invitation, because it's one of those things that clearly is happening for a reason. So thank you. But so you can find me on Instagram is at people call me Jess. And then also my website is just Jessica Meils. It's meils.com. You can also find me in the podcast world. You can just search my name, because there's plenty of podcasts on there for you to find.
I'll link it all in the description.
I know. But yeah, reach out to me. I love connecting with people on Instagram. That's the only social media that I find joy in. And so, come say hi.
Same. Well, thank you so much for being here. We met right when I was waking up. And so we've been on this whole journey together, and I just appreciate you so much.
I know. Thank you. I appreciate you too. Again, it's been such it's been fun, right? Like to look back at where we've been.
Yeah. It's really cool. It's really cool to look back.
And I'm excited to see where we're all going too.
Yeah. Same.
Thank you so much, Travis.
All right. Talk soon.
Okay.
Bye, everybody.